The South African president freezes hikes in university fees after angry protests by students. They'd accused the African National Congress of breaking its promise of free education, threatening black students especially. So has the ANC shifted its focus post-apartheid? And does its new direction alienate even more South Africans? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. Now, they call them the born-free South Africans, a generation of 20-somethings who've grown up since the end of apartheid. The fight to end white minority rule is over, but this generation is also taking to the streets fighting for the right to education. Now, university students across South Africa have been angrily demonstrating, storming the University of Johannesburg, the headquarters of the ruling ANC, and indeed government buildings in Pretoria. Some are comparing these protests to the Soweto uprising of 1976 at the height of the apartheid regime. Now, President Jacob Zuma met the students on Friday to try to work towards a solution. Here's what he had to say after that meeting.
We agreed that there will be a zero increase of university fees in 2016. Discussions will continue looking at broader issues than the fees. Government understands the difficulty faced by students from poor households and urges all affected to allow the process to unfold, to find long-term solutions in order to ensure access to education by our students.
Well, all of that is what the president had to say, but is that enough to quell the disillusionment among the born-free generation? Let's bring in our guests now. Joining us from Johannesburg, we have Manyi, who's a former spokesman for the South African government, and we have Ayesha Kajee, political analyst and former programme director at the International Human Rights Exchange programme at the University of Witwatersrand. Welcome to you both. Thank you very much for joining us on this important day in South Africa's recent history. And Jimmy, can I start with you? The critics of the ANC government have accused it of betraying one of the fundamental defining principles of the ANC, and that is of providing access to education for all, no matter how little they have. Has the ANC broken that trust?
Definitely not. But before we get there, let's just correct something. This term called born free is a term that most of us in the progressive movement actually detest, because we don't think we are free yet. We think that the economical landscape of South Africa is still very much skewed. So therefore, to categorize this group as born free is actually a bit on the incorrect side.
They were born without the shackles of apartheid, weren't they? Nonetheless, if you don't agree with that terminology, will you just look at the essence of the question, and that is the ANC disappointing the masses of South Africans, many of whom are sentimentally attached to the very notion of the African National Congress?
I think the best way to respond to that question is to look at objective information. And as things stand right now, the African National Congress in the recent elections got a whooping 62%. So for a party to get 62% and then say the party hasn't got the support of the people will be a little bit disingenuous. So we think that the African National Congress continues to enjoy the support of the people, and it has not veered from its path. If one looks at the facts, about 87% of the schools today in South Africa are no-fee schools. So poor children go to schools that are actually 100% subsidized by the state. Indeed, in terms of the higher tertiary, in the tertiary education is still work in progress. But as we see it right now, the budget for bursaries of students that are coming from poor families shot from something like 4 million to something like almost 16 billion, as it were. So indeed, I think this government has been working very hard to make sure that it does good on its promises.
And Ayesha, what do you think about that? Do you think that the ANC is honouring one of its fundamental pledges to the people of South Africa with regard to this education issue?
Obviously not. If tens of thousands of young people are coming out on the streets, as we've seen today, about 10,000 at the Union buildings, thousands more in other centres around the country, obviously these are young people who feel they're not getting the quality, and I'm quoting now from an ANC poster of 1994, free quality education for all. Obviously, they feel they're not getting that. And kudos to them for actually having got this concession that they got today, that there'll be no fee increase. But that's only the first step in a long journey.
And Jimmy?
Let's understand what South Africa has taken over. South Africa has taken over an economy that was actually in the drain and had to work from a base of negative to get to where we are today. So if you look at what we had to do to pay off the debts and everything, a lot of that delayed what could have been done. But as I say, that a lot indeed has been done. You must remember that, in fact, even in terms of the key priorities of this government, education is one of the apex priorities, actually the apex priority of this government. What government has also done, it has actually separated education so that there's a greater focus to have basic education by one ministry and higher education for another ministry. That is a clear demonstration that the issue of education in South Africa is quite a serious matter. And if you look at the actual government expenditure, the Department of Education is one of the departments with the most in terms of the budget allocations. So all objective indications are that this government is taking education very seriously.
At this point, it would be interesting just to hear from South Africa's Minister of Higher Education, who'd been speaking to reporters about this recent spate of protests. But the comment which really made the headlines in South Africa was one that he made before the media conference officially began. Let's listen.
Then if the students don't accept this, we'll start our own movement. Students must fall.
Jimmy, can I come back to you? That was a rather unfortunate aside, wasn't it, by the Minister for Higher Education, Nzimande. Does that tell us about the attitude with which the ANC has towards the larger mass of South African people, in this particular instance, the students?
The African National Congress and its government is very serious about young people. In fact, we've got even a ministry that is looking at the issues of young people. Women and children and all of that. So the issue of young people is very close to the heart of this government. So for people to say anything to the contrary is really just agendas that are not patriotic. But if one looks at, I think the important thing is really to look at what is the objective data on the ground. You have ministry that is focusing on young people. You have BE scorecards that have got categories to ensure that young people are being empowered, And you've got a target by this government to make sure that each and every province has got a university. So indeed, and if you look at the proliferation of schools, if you look at the size of the budget, it's forever increasing exponentially to show that the issue of education is serious.
Okay.
This impasse that has happened now has also got even the attention of the president. The president did not leave it to the minister. He thought it's an important matter for him to stop whatever was doing and focus on what the children are asking for.
OK, let's put that then to Ayesha. This has been deemed a serious enough matter. The ANC takes its young people exceedingly seriously, and the president himself has intervened and frozen tuition fees for at least a year.
Yet the president himself spoke from an air-conditioned office within the Union buildings. He refused to come out to actually speak to the large crowd of students that have been waiting for him to do so. And in fact, reports now coming in say that police are using rubber bullets, tear gas fired from big armored Nyalas, big armored vehicles to clear the Union building grounds. Is this the action of a government that cares about its students, those students who've marched there to hear from the president himself? And as for that comment by Minister Nzimande, in my opinion, that's really shocking and shameful.
And Jimmy, you wanted to come back on that.
You can even hear this. No, you can see this person is just being sensational here. The situation is that the students were very disciplined, but there was some thuggery element that got involved to mess up a very peaceful and a genuine demonstration by the students. And when those thugs came in, you must see the visuals of these thugs lifting fences, doing all kinds of thuggery activities, throwing rocks. When one minister came out, they threw bottles and stones and everything to him. Therefore, the situation from a security point of view was not suitable for a president to come out. The president had all the intentions to come out, etc. But as soon as the situation on the ground got very rowdy and violent for no apparent reason, it was therefore unsafe for the president to come out. But instead, he managed to also get the message across. The important thing that the students were looking for was 0%, and the president has delivered on what was required. What was required was 0%, they got 0%. What was required was extension to be able to write exams, to compensate for the lost time. The president secured that deal. So what more do people want?
All right, let's at this point look at the state of the ANC, the ruling party, of course. Now, membership has fallen by around 25% within the last 3 years. President Zuma has blamed this on factionalism within the party, but critics say members are defecting because the ANC has shifted focus from fighting for the people to fighting for just a few. Now, the ANC's founding charter stated the people shall share in the country's wealth and the land should be shared among those who work it. But 70% of South Africans believe corruption has worsened in the past 5 years. Corrupt officials are said to have stolen a staggering $50 billion since the ANC came to power. And South Africa is slipping down the Corruption Perceptions Index compiled by Transparency International. It was 67th out of 174 countries last year. That's a fall of 34 places since 2001. And so, Ayesha, can I come to you? Because it seems very much as though the love affair with the ANC, is it over or is it certainly fading, isn't it?
It's on the decline. And, recent newspaper reports this week have compared, for example, how many students could have been educated if certain key expenditures done by this government had not been undertaken. Amongst those, of course, the toll road system, also the upgrades to the presidential homestead in Nkandla, and several other things like the arms deal. So, really, the people are angry. The young people, the students are angry. And giving them a concession on 0% fee increase is not meeting all of their demands. It's a step in the right direction. But then to brutalize them immediately after making that announcement is really, really not on. It gives me flashbacks to my own student days in the 1980s when I was fighting apartheid.
And, of course, many people have likened this particular moment in South African history to 1976, of course, that iconic moment of Hector Peterson and the Soweto uprising. Jimmy, you have to admit, don't you, that under the stewardship of President Jacob Zuma, the ANC has been mired in a string of scandals, both corruption and others, and has really lost its way. These people who are on the streets of South Africa no longer see the ANC as the saviours of their country.
Let's look at the facts. What are the facts? The facts are, is there corruption in South Africa? Without a doubt, there is corruption in South Africa. Is the president doing anything about it? Without a doubt. What evidence is there? As we see it right now, the president has signed no less than 40 presidential proclamations to investigate the issues of corruption. And we've had some arrests, even some very senior people in the police force were part of those arrests, as it were. So indeed, there's corruption, but there's a handle on this corruption. But this is not just a government thing. Even the private sector in South Africa is also corrupt. We've just had a situation where the construction center milked government something to the tune of 50 billion rand, as it were. That's government money that was meant to be building stadiums in preparation for 2010. So to say that this government is mad in corruption, is not doing anything about it, is simply just not true. And also, I speak here as a person who was a student in 1976. There is nothing comparable to what happened there. Where in 1976, we were shot with live ammunition. We were shot with real grenades, not just stun grenades. We were bulleted with serious ammunition. We were tortured. I don't even want to go there. and to try and compare, although it's unacceptable still, but to try and compare what happened in 1976 with what has happened here today is perhaps a serious indication of people not knowing what actually happened in Soweto. I was in Soweto myself. I can tell you what happened. There was tear gas, and this time around, tear gas is used as a last option. There was no rubber bullets then. It was real bullets of R1s and so on. And I think it's actually disgusting for anyone to draw a comparison with 76 with what has happened here. Today, it was just a dispersion of crowd, some unruly elements, and etc. But there was no intention to kill like it was in 1976. It's an insult to compare this government to what happened in 1976.
Ayesha, Jimmy has just expounded very eloquently as to the situation, the scenario in 1976 being very different to today. But nonetheless, vestiges of apartheid remain. We have the students in Stellenbosch recently, within recent months, still complaining about the use of Afrikaans, that their own language made them feel as if they were second-class students within one of the country's finest educational institutions. Is 21 years realistic, a period of time for the ANC to have swept away everything, all of the constructs of apartheid?
Well, I think, yes, that there are still vestiges of apartheid. That's not in doubt in anyone's mind, I would think. There is still widespread white privilege. And part of the reason that white privilege continues to endure at the highest levels, white male privilege, is because young black and female people are excluded from the tertiary education system by virtue of being unable to pay for tertiary education. So it's very, very pertinent to what we're talking about. But Martine, I must just say two things, please. Reporters on the scene, including Reedy Klabi on Radio 702 this morning, reported that it was not the students from the Fees Must Fall movement who actually caused the chaos and set things on fire and threw stones today. It was people who were actually wearing ANC T-shirts. And just in a similar vein, this afternoon, after Mr. Zuma's announcement, the people who actually started the chaos were not leaders of the Fees Must Fall movement. 702 reporters were actually pleading with police to not shoot, to stop shooting. This was live on air. Pictures have been tweeted. You can't get away from this. The students have been brutalized. And the third thing I must say, Martine, is that the leaders of this movement, I've been at WIT several times in the last week. I've been at UJ yesterday and today, this morning. And I can tell you that the leaders of this Fees Must Fall movement have been highly disciplined, very, very determined, quietly determined, and on the whole, really non-violent.
Okay, all right, Ayesha, thank you.
Very disciplined and very non-violent.
Thank you for that. Let me hand over straight away to Jimmy. Jimmy, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, first thing, let's start with racism in South Africa. Is there racism in South Africa? Without a doubt. South Africa is still a very racist country. The racial economy of South Africa is still the economy of South Africa is still very much in white hands. The management of the economy of South Africa, 70% of the top jobs in this country are still held by white people. So indeed, it's not vestiges, it's serious apartheid legacy that we're dealing with. And I think it's important to understand that the plight of black people in South Africa didn't start 21 years ago. It started 350 odd years ago with Dutch imperialism, with British imperialism, and with apartheid in 1948. So it's almost 350 years of oppression, of colonization that black people have been suffering in South Africa. To expect that a mere 21 years is going to be enough to clean that up is really disingenuous. How can anyone in their right minds think that is the case?
But the ANC must have. But the ANC must have.
Let me finish your point.
Okay.
Let me finish my point. To come back to the students' issue, indeed, I confirm the students were very disciplined. There were some almost like planted elements. You know, some people that were wearing ANC T-shirts and so on. The fact that you're wearing an ANC T-shirt does not make you an ANC member. So I think it was a strategy to rubbish the brand of the ANC. Very clearly, a cadre, a disciplined cadre of the movement would not have done that. So this was just a no-brainer, just to show that there are people with an agenda to destabilize the ANC, to rubbish the name of the ANC, and this is what they did. Others, in fact, had red T-shirts underneath which we suspect were members of the EFF that were wearing an ANC T-shirt just to be able to rubbish the brand.
All right, Jimmy, can we just pause there for a moment, because now we can speak to Mosibudu Rasetaba, who is president of the Student Representative Council of the University of Pretoria. And thank you very much for coming on the line to talk to us. Now, you've been in the meetings with the president, President Zuma, and you've been in the Union Buildings grounds, haven't you? What exactly did the president say, and has that satisfied you?
The president really, we had a few resolutions, and one of the resolutions that we had was that there will be 0% increase in all universities across the country in the year for 2016. And we also further spoke about students that have been detained and being arrested, and how we're going to go about trying to assist them in dropping charges or getting them out of prison. The question of whether I'm happy or not, I think this is a win. Partly, but obviously the students of South Africa are still calling for free higher education. But as we stand now, it's not necessarily attainable in the next year or in the near future, but we're going to have to look long-term and into plans and how do we make this work. But as for 2016, the 0% increase is something that the students of South Africa can be happy about, and their actions and their unity and solidarity that they've shown over the few weeks in fighting this increment has shown to be fruitful.
And beyond the issue of fees, I know it's the issue of tuition fees that have galvanised you so strongly over recent weeks. Beyond that, can you describe to us what your generation wants, what you think of the government, and what you actually want from modern-day South Africa that you're not getting now?
The thing we have in South Africa is South Africa is a very unequal society, given our historical past with apartheid and one group being advantaged over another. So we believe that one of the tools to really alleviate or really bridge that gap of inequality is education. And what we expect from our government, what they promised in 1994, is really quality free education for previously disadvantaged groups in South Africa. So as the youth of South Africa, we're calling on the government, we're expecting from the government to be providing that free quality education so that the gap, the inequality gap can really be fixed, and we can see and have aspirations to really achieve what we want to.
Mosibudu, thank you very much for taking the time off to come and fill us in on this programme. Jimmy, can I put what my impression was of his situation, and that is that the South African youth seem to have diminishing hopes, not just on the education front, but they have diminishing hopes within modern South Africa.
No, there's no evidence for that. If you look, for instance, in the African National Congress, for instance, we've just had a relaunch of the African National Congress Youth League. Thousands and thousands of young people have come back to the ANC and have come back to make sure that they revive and make sure that the ANC rises to the next level. So the issue of interest in how this government is doing things amongst young people is very much big. But are there problems? Indeed, there are problems. But these are not insurmountable problems. This government is dealing with these problems. As you saw today, there was a problem. President came out.
Okay.
The problem is sort of
Jimmy,
managed.
Can I thank you? Can I thank you very much? And Ayesha, can I give you the last word? We haven't got very much time. But what did you think of what Mosibudu had to say, and what do you think of the current situation of young people in your country?
I think if one looks at the list of demands that was put together by the students, by the Fees Must Fall movement, we'll see that it goes far, far beyond 0% increase for next year. There is actually a whole list of wishes. It's a wish list, really, around, for example, universities no longer outsourcing labor, cheap labor, etc. And you can see from this that the students have a very strong social justice conscience.
Right.
Perhaps in the words of Amilcar Cabral, I'd like to say, tell no lies and claim no easy victories. This wasn't an easy victory. It's a start. It's not the end.
Thank you very much indeed, both of you. Very interesting conversation. Of course, thank you as well to Mosibudu Rasetaba, our student, who came on the line to us. And As ever, thank you for watching. You can leave your comments on the programme's page of our website, aljazeera.com. You can post your views on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or of course you can tweet us at AJ Inside Story. Thanks for watching from me, Martine Dennis, and the team. Bye for now.